Welcome everyone to the Impact Summit Kickoff event powered by GSA's Technology Transformation Services, aka TTS. This is the first ever event of its kind, and we're super excited to have so many of you join us today. I'm your host, Rebecca McBride, and TTS's Director of Strategic Partnerships. While we cover some quick housekeeping notes, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, maybe give us your name, the agency you're with, and what brought you here today. And while you're sharing with everyone, quick tip, click that drop down so that it says all attendees so that everyone can see. All right, those housekeeping notes that we promised, everyone is automatically muted. So if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box and we'll answer as many as we can in the session Q&As. We are recording today's session, which is awesome because we're going to be able to post it along with other resources you're seeing today. And a link to live captioning for this event is about to be provided in the chat. Please make sure you're abiding by the TTS Code of Conduct throughout our time together. And last, but certainly not least, for our media friends with inquiries, email press@gsa.gov with the topic you'd like to talk about and any deadline. All right, look at that agenda slide. As you can see, we've got a packed couple hours here for you. Today's events kick off the first of many conversations that we hope bring insight into how technology is being effectively used to drive mission outcomes and improve the public experience with government. For today's specific session, we'll highlight recent impactful work of TTS partners. These efforts are going to show how the government is meeting challenges head on and making it doable in ways we can all learn from. We're going to be featuring projects in areas that lead to the most transformational impact for customers, such as artificial intelligence, cloud and infrastructure, data and analytics, experience, identity, and accelerators like assisted acquisitions and agile methodologies. Our hope is that after today's event, you have a good awareness of best practices and tools and anything that interests you. You know how to engage with technology experts and resources to help solve any challenges you're facing, and you are better aligned to collaborate with other technology leaders and practitioners across Fed. Before we dive into the content, which is going to be great, we do have a poll for you around a debatable topic. So please take one moment to answer this poll question. For folks that would like to put their answer in the chat, if they can't see the poll, feel free. I'm going to read the question out. The question is, what's the best tech invention of the 21st century? Is it online streaming, social media, digital assistants, or e-reader? All right, everybody take a moment. Oh, looks like a couple of these are fighting for the winner. Online TV and video streaming is definitely ahead, followed closely by AI and digital assistants. Yep. All right. It definitely looks like video streaming won. I'm not surprised given how frequently it's probably being used right now in the time of COVID. All right. With that, it is time for me to introduce the GSA Administrator, Emily Murphy, to begin our event.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Technology Transformation Services Impact Summit. I'm honored to be able to join you as we showcase the innovative work and results that GSA's TTS has achieved with our agency partners. Over the past few years, TTS has become a go-to agency partner and government-wide leader in federal IT modernization. TTS and its partners are fundamentally changing the way the American public interacts with government, leveraging new technologies to better serve Americans. Teams across TTS, working as one unit, are able to provide the best suite of services to our agency partners so they can deliver on their specific agency missions. The TTS clients and markets teams, such as 18F, the Centers of Excellence, and the Presidential Innovation Fellows, implement transformation through collaboration and expertise. The TTS Solutions team, which includes products like Cloud.gov, Digital.gov, Login.gov, and FedRAMP, are the technology products that enable government-wide innovation. Collectively, TTS has the expertise, experience, and innovative outlook to tackle some of the government's toughest IT modernization challenges head-on and provide leading-edge technology solutions. You'll hear more today from our TTS agency partners on some of the groundbreaking work that's been accomplished. I want to take a moment to highlight two of these impressive projects, both of which GSA has been very proud to support. First, I want to talk about the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice's Civil Rights Reporting Portal, which is located at civilrights.justice.gov, consolidated more than 30 unique reporting pathways. The new portal dramatically eases the burden on victims of civil rights violations to identify the proper reporting channels. For division staff, this new experience creates a more consistent, collaborative, and transparent process. It allows staff to easily review, sort, and redirect reports to the appropriate team for analysis. This saves time and energy, freeing up more capacity for the division to focus on advancing civil rights. Second, I want to talk about the Small Business Administration. In response to the COVID crisis, the SBA needed to quickly distribute funding to keep businesses afloat. SBA's rapid implementation of login.gov and how they leverage this government-wide identity service is allowing SBA to get out of the identity management business. Prior to TTS implementing login.gov at SBA, SBA had its own identity management solution that was based on legacy code and was difficult to maintain. Additionally, not all SBA programs use the legacy solution, so small businesses might need multiple different system accounts when utilizing SBA services. Login.gov streamlined service for small businesses. There have been over 170,000 users of Login.gov at SBA since April. As I mentioned, those are just two of the transformational TTS projects, and you'll have a chance to hear directly from a number of these agency partners and others. Lastly, I want to commend TTS and its leadership for their efforts supporting the federal government's response to COVID-19. The crisis response to COVID as one TTS team has been inspiring. Working side by side with our agency partners, TTS has been able to deliver quickly the platforms and products that have allowed for rapid digital adoption. I want to thank the entire TTS team and their partners for all they are doing to drive change and positively transform how the government interacts with government agencies. I hope you have a great summit.
What a great video from Emily. Before we keep going, just a quick reminder, we're seeing several fabulous responses in the chat window, but make sure that when you're doing the drop down, it doesn't just say all panelists. Make sure it says all panelists and attendees, and then everyone will be able to see. All right, back to business. So Emily touched on the need for some of these specific services in the market, and it is my pleasure now to turn it over to Bob DeLuca, TTS's acting director, on who TTS truly is today.
Thank you, Emily, for your inspirational words and for your continued confidence in our program. Hello, my name is Bob DeLuca, and I am the acting director for GSA's Technology Transformation Services Group. Thank you very much. I wanted to welcome you to our first in a series of Impact Summits. Today, you're going to hear from 6 of our partners. They're going to tell their stories of modernization, and they're going to tell you about the successes, the challenges that they've had along the way. Our partners choose to take on some of the most difficult challenges in government, and they choose to partner with the TTS. One thing I did want to bring up before we launch into the summit is just a quick overview of TTS. Many times in my conversations with our partners and future partners, there's maybe some confusion about what TTS is. So I'll begin the conversation along the lines of this. Have you ever heard of 18F? And they say, absolutely, we've heard of 18F. They've helped us solve some problems approximately 4 or 5 months ago. So great. Have you ever heard of login.gov? And they say, absolutely. They're working on some of our identity management issues. So I'll choose another group. Have you ever heard of the Presidential Innovation Fellows? And the conversation continues along that line. And then at some point I stop them and say, you've absolutely heard of the Technology Transformation Services. TTS aims to be the recognized modernization catalyst for federal agencies. We are approximately 317 people. We have agreements with over 100 offices in 42 different agencies. And we're continuing to partner with industry to bring the best of the private sector and the best of public service together to solve these difficult problems. In our conversations with our customers and our internal looks at the talent that we have on board, we've determined that there are approximately 6 focus areas in which we can really bring amazing value to our customers. We don't do everything, but we do these 6 things very well. And we definitely love to talk to you more about that. So those 6 areas are artificial intelligence, cloud adoption and infrastructure optimization, data and analytics, customer experience, identity management, and accelerators. So in all that, TTS aspires to be the hub for the technological implementation, innovation, talent, and acquisition. So without any further delay, I would like to begin and kick off the summit today. And I want you to listen, I want you to participate, and I would love for you to learn from the experiences that our partners have gone through already. And I have one ask. I would like for you to provide feedback. As I indicated earlier, this is a series of events. This is the first one, and we think it's going to be great. We'd like the next one to be better, and the one after that to be even better. You're investing 2 hours of your time with us today. We want to make it valuable for you. So I encourage open and honest feedback as to the service we're providing for you today. And with that, I'm going to transition to the moderator, and I'm looking forward to a great day today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Like Bob said, we are truly always looking for feedback. So we're going to have a specific poll to collect your thoughts during the break. It'll be around 3 p.m. or so, but we would absolutely love to have any additional thoughts or insights or ideas you have over email. The email for that would be tts-info@gsa.gov, and I believe it was just posted in the chat box as well, so take a peek. All right, up next. One of the ways we're able to accelerate IT modernization is through artificial intelligence. And our next session highlights ways you can leverage AI at your agencies. I'm now going to turn it over to Harry Lee, the Assistant Commissioner of Clients and Markets.
Thank you, Rebecca, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for participating in our event here today. As Rebecca said, I'm Harry Lee, the Assistant Commissioner for Clients and Markets within TTS. Clients and Markets is a team of IT strategists and consultants. We are feds, partnering with feds to enhance and improve our agency partners' overall mission through IT modernization. I'm excited for this conversation today on artificial intelligence, or AI, and its role in IT modernization with Dr. Jane Pinellas. Dr. Pinellas is the Chief of Testing, Evaluation, and Assessment at the DoD's JAIC, or the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center. Welcome, Dr. Pinellas.
Thank you so much, Harry. It's great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about the JAIC.
AI and its capabilities offer government agencies a great opportunity to fundamentally change how they serve the public and public servants. There are a number of case studies where AI has enabled agencies to better achieve greater insight, to make better decisions, and improve service delivery to the public. And as the value of AI continues to evolve, its importance in the agency's mission will continue to grow. So let's dive into some questions, Dr. Pinellas. First, can you tell us a little bit about your group's role within the JAIC and how the JAIC is making an impact in the area of artificial intelligence?
Absolutely. So again, my group in the JAIC is the Test, Evaluation, and Assessments group. So that means we are the ultimate plank holders for ensuring that AI-enabled systems in the department perform like they're supposed to. They do things they're supposed to do, and they don't do things that they're not supposed to do. So that's one of our goals, is to rigorously and objectively evaluate all the JAIC developed AI capabilities according to their mission and ethical requirements. Additionally, because the AI problem is relatively new to the department, and especially to the test and evaluation community, we have an additional role, and that's to productize the knowledge that we get about the test and evaluation processes for AI-enabled systems and share that knowledge across the greater DoD RDT&E community, so that the services, the Department of Operational Test and Evaluation, R&E, et cetera, can learn from everything that we've done at the JAIC, both the good and the bad. And then finally, we also facilitate some discussions on T&E policy. While the JAIC is not a test and evaluation, the JAIC is not in the position really to dictate policy on test and evaluation. We are an important stakeholder and in many ways a pathfinder for test and evaluation. So we participate in a lot of those discussions as well, as far as standards for test and evaluation, standards for safety and security and ethics for those systems. So that's my group specifically. As far as the JAIC overall, our goal, if we had to summarize it in one sentence, would be to accelerate the adoption of AI in the DoD. And we do that through delivering AI capability, through scaling those capabilities to create critical mass and repeatability in the department, cultivating talent, and engaging with the relevant stakeholders, including academia, industry, private world, et cetera, and finally leading those discussions on AI ethics, safety, and security.
Great, thank you very much. I know that you probably experienced some challenges as associated with the evaluation of AI, and how do you think AI practitioners can break through those challenges, and a little bit about what those challenges that you see from your chair are?
Absolutely. So the world of challenges in test and evaluation of AI is quite big. First, I would say we have a pretty big organizational or bureaucratic challenge, and that's that traditionally test and evaluation of systems within the department is a very linear process. So if you think about manufacturing a particular system, whether it's a tank or a helmet, usually there are sort of three major test steps that take place: contractor testing, then developmental testing, which is more focused on prototypes and testing of specific subcomponents of a system. And then finally, an operational test, when an operationally realistic system is placed in its hopefully operationally realistic environment, and often even against a realistic adversary. And you collect data throughout all of those phases. AI presents a slightly different problem, as does most software, which is that this linear fashion of testing no longer works. It has to be an iterative, agile kind of circular process, right? Where AI is developed, and then testing is executed, and then the feedback goes back to the developer, and you keep iterating until the product is good enough. So we really work more as a part of an integrated product team. And that's a new process in the department. The idea of a repeatable cyclical kind of T&E and this continuous feedback. We also are challenged often when it comes to methods of test and evaluation of AI. Traditionally, the DoD has been a consumer of existing science, existing methods like statistics, design of experiments, and things like that when it came to test and evaluation. But we're finding that now DoD is both the consumer but also the producer of a lot of the knowledge that comes with test and evaluation of AI-enabled systems. We're finding that even in our interactions with academia and industry, a lot of these solutions simply do not exist yet. And this has to do with any part of testing, such as collecting requirements, quantifying things like ethical standards, collecting operational metrics, doing human factors testing, and testing at the edge. The idea that the system that you deploy can change after you deploy it, and so there's continuous testing and development that must take place. And then finally, I think one of our biggest challenges perhaps is what we call testing at the speed of relevance, right? So T&E, and anybody who's met me before knows that I say this, but T&E is like your last briefer before lunch. It's the thing that holds up the deployment. It's the thing that happens before the warfighter gets the system that they need, right? And so it's absolutely imperative that we balance the idea of testing for all important things with the idea that we don't want to take so long that the system now becomes irrelevant to the warfighter. And so we're working a lot on automated testing and repeatable testing. We're sharing a lot of knowledge across the DoD, and GSA has been really helpful in that regard with other communities as well, such as the intelligence community or the medical community in some cases. We're engaging commercial industry and academia partners and fostering those collaborations, even with our international allies and partners, so that we can harvest all the knowledge from test and evaluation that hopefully will mean that we can test at the speed of relevance.
You touched on ethics of AI briefly as you were going through that last response. Can you comment on what folks can expect in terms of how the JAIC is ensuring the responsible use of AI?
Absolutely. So ethics is something that's incredibly important to the United States and to the JAIC specifically, right? In February of 2020, the DoD adopted the 5 ethics principles for AI-enabled systems: responsible, equitable, traceable, reliable, and governable. The JAIC has hired Alka Patel, Ms. Alka Patel, who is our chief ethicist, and we're working actually to make her team a little bit bigger. But that team is really in charge of ensuring that responsible use of AI. They've done that in a few different ways. One, they actually lead a working group across the department on responsible use of AI that is focused on operationalizing the 5 principles and actually figuring out how will we implement them, how will we test to them, et cetera. We work very closely with Alka in that group. Additionally, they've instituted a responsible AI champions pilot. That pilot mirrored the Microsoft responsible AI champions pilot. I got to participate as well as many other members of the JAIC that were diverse in terms of their backgrounds. So anybody from policy to acquisitions to contracts to product management to missions got to participate in this pilot. And basically, it was a series of readings and talks and case studies and discussions, many, many hours spent trying to understand that in a way, first of all, we're all responsible for creating and ensuring responsible use of these systems, and then kind of getting a little bit at how do you actually, whatever your job is, how do you build ethics into those processes? I think T&E, test and evaluation, will play an incredibly big role in ensuring that those processes are followed. But it is a challenge for us because sort of by the nature of ethics, those requirements are very qualitative, and we have to translate them into something very objective and very quantifiable for each product. But it's a challenge we embrace. And it just speaks to the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration and diversity of thought that we need now in test and evaluation.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for that. One last question before we jump to questions coming from the participants today. Our Centers of Excellence within TTS has been supporting the JAIC for going on about a year. I think it'll be maybe 10 months or so. So what do you see as some of the lasting impact of this collaboration?
Absolutely. So GSA and TTS has been just a tremendous partner to the JAIC from its inception. We've collaboratively developed things like data governance, procedures for fair contracting and vendor selection, assessing AI maturity, et cetera. So across the JAIC, we've seen just several benefits of working with TTS. On a personal level, specifically for T&E, I've been involved in several initiatives. One was the vendor selection process, the source selection process for our biggest mission initiative of joint warfighting that was governed by JSA, and it was a standardized, governed, easy way and very fair way which is extremely important for us because of potential protests, to select our sources. For test and evaluation specifically, actually, contracting has been one of our biggest problems because we're trying to contract for test and evaluation independently of all of our product lines so that we can maintain our objectivity and credibility. And that's never been done before. That's a first of its kind of requirement. And we're actually working with the contracting Center of Excellence over at GSA to try to come up with a multiple awards contract that will enable me and my team to compete our test requirements very quickly and in a repeated and fair way. And then finally, I got a chance to collaborate with one of the leads for your AI COE, Krista Kinner, on a document that subsequently might turn into something more than just a document, which is the executive guide to AI. And that was just a tremendous opportunity for me to, for something bigger to contribute to on the test and evaluation side, but also, that kind of collaboration with the Presidential Innovations Fellows, with people from other disciplines, with people from other agencies, again, as we try to share knowledge and share expertise and learn on each other's mistakes rather than our own. That was just a tremendous opportunity.
Great, thank you very much. We've had a couple of questions that have come in through our chat, so let's kind of pivot to those for a second. Regarding AI and testing evaluation, how useful has the collaboration with UN or EU been so far? And can Jake leverage existing T&E, I guess, from those areas? Have you seen anything from a collaboration with UN or EU?
Yep, so we're working closely with those partners right now. Actually, we've started a lot of those international talks. We are finding mostly that we are stuck in the same areas and we're experiencing the same problems, which is a good thing, because now we can attack them collaboratively and we're not necessarily missing a whole lot of something that somebody already knows how to do. But I think especially when it comes to human machine teaming and human factors type testing, we're seeing that a lot of great work is going on, for instance, in Great Britain in that. So we're hoping to partner with them and learn a little bit more about how they're doing it. But there's definitely much to be learned, but also just working collaboratively to develop new methods as well.
Are you, speaking of methods, are you using any specific methodology for AI, especially around project management? And how are you learning from industry as a part of your journey in AI?
Yep, so we've mostly adopted something that we're now calling DevSecOps process, right? So if you think of a DevOps process and then with security built in and now with ethical requirements built in as well. And so the idea is pretty simple. It's just that it's a continuous development loop that has sort of user at the front, collecting user requirements at the front, because mission requirements have to drive everything we do at the Jake, but also now we collect the ethical requirements up front as well. And then there's a piece where a model or an algorithm is developed and we test it at that developmental level and provide feedback back to the developer. And then once an algorithm is good enough, then we can move on with integration and operational testing, as well as human machine testing as well.
Speaking of testing, what automated testing solutions is the Jake considering or adopting, and how has that impacted current projects?
So that's a great question. As far as automated testing for now, what we're able to do already is basically provide a repeatable test process at the developmental testing stage. So when we first get a model, we are able to somewhat easily iterate with the vendor. They can put their model through test and evaluation. They know what the process is. We have procured a couple of test harnesses, which we can use for this purpose, and they can simply submit their model, get results on the back end of it, see how the model does, and then hopefully quickly iterate. And that was a really important piece of what we were trying to do, because the industry sources that we work with, that's what they're used to, and that's what they do as well. I think in practice, the DoD requirements for testing, just because of the types of the systems that we tend to produce, they are considerably more stringent and considerably more rigorous than any industry requirement that we're going to see. And so we work with the industry partners and we're learning. There are many things we can learn from them, but we also have to innovate at the DoD as well.
Great. Here's an interesting question that came up is, so it presupposes that we're in the era of narrow AI. First, kind of get your reaction to that if you agree or not. And then as a follow-on, is the JAIC thinking now about, or how is the JAIC thinking now about the long-term implications of AI and plausible scenarios for when we move into kind of a general AI era?
So I think that for now, I think the way that we're thinking of AI at the JAIC is we're thinking about taking some of the more mundane tasks that a human is currently doing and automating those tasks and trying to focus the analysts and the humans really on doing things that we don't know really how to make machines do yet, things like reasoning. And I'm sure we might eventually get there, but it will probably take a while. So probably in the near term, we're trying mostly to introduce efficiencies, I would say, into our systems by introducing AI and just automating tasks. I'm sorry, I think I'm not sure if I answered the whole question.
No, I think you did. That was good. Thank you. Or I guess the other piece of that was, when do you see that changing from kind of a narrow AI to more of a general AI position?
That's tough for me to say, especially as I again think about the ethical principles. I think we're not going to be moving in that direction until we have figured out how we can quantify and test and ensure that we're able to adhere to the ethical principles that we've adopted.
Got it. So speaking of that, what guidelines are used to ensure AI is used ethically, and that there are transparency in terms of machine language, AI tech being used right now on the public and public accessible data?
So on the JAIC side specifically, right, the ethics committee is part of every product that we take on. So early on, when we decide whether or not the JAIC will take on a product, we have instituted a process called a product review board, where all the stakeholders at the JAIC get together and basically go through a product proposal and decide, is this something that we're going to take on? And ethical considerations gets a vote in that. And so if there's any danger, to any kind of data misuse, if there is danger of bias, et cetera, all of the 5 principles, we will go through them. And ethics gets to voice their concerns, and potentially if there's no mitigation strategy, then that's just not a project that we can take on. Thankfully, we're in a situation right now where we have lots of work and lots of opportunities to choose the kind of projects that we get to do.
Got it. So final question for you, and it may be a big question that folks may have, is what are the key learnings and takeaways for you since you've been in this role?
That's a great question. I don't know that I've had a lot of time to think what I've learned. We just have such an ambitious organization and fast-moving organization. Yeah. I think some of the takeaways. One is really just the importance of diversity of thought. Test and evaluation has been a very quantitative field for so long, and folks like me with degrees in statistics and related disciplines have been this tiny community that functions together. And now, and then at some point, the test community realized it's really important to have the operational perspective as well, and kind of have ops analysts and ops researchers in it to make sure that what we're testing for isn't purely scientific and has operational implications. And I think now incorporating ethics it is really a huge next step. So that diversity of thought, I think, is becoming just so increasingly important. The world of T&E has just grown so much with introduction of AI. And if previously, we always struggled with things like, how big of a test should we run? And is the test too expensive and things like that? Well, now with the introduction potentially of autonomous systems, the space of things we should be testing for is possibly infinite. And so what I'm learning is that it's no longer going to be about one test event, right? It's not like there's a system, we're going to test it, it will pass or it will fail. Now it's really about building a body of evidence and understanding over time how a system works. And that requires just so much reform and so much collaboration with all the other organizations. So it's definitely a challenge. It's one we're very excited to take on. And I've never seen this much collaboration between government and industry and academia to try to tackle this problem. So I'm very encouraged by it and very excited to take it on.
Well, that's great to hear. We really thank you, Dr. Pinellas, for your participation today. It's great to have you here and learn more about what you're doing within the JAIC and what the JAIC's doing with AI and about TNE. And just really appreciate you being a part of the session today. So with that, back to you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.
Thanks, Harry, and thank you, Dr. Pinellas. That was amazing. We got some fabulous questions, and what a great story on the important work at the JAIC and how AI can be truly transformational. Next up, it's my pleasure to pass it to Alexandra Porter, who leads our data and analytics focus area, and she's going to moderate our discussion with several partners that highlight how they've used data and analytics to address challenges at their respective agencies. Over to you, Alexandra.
Thanks, Rebecca. As mentioned, my name is Alexandra Porter, and I'll be moderating today's data panel. So working in government, we're all very mission-driven. Identifying new ways to optimize data to carry out mission priorities is key. I'm very excited today. Our esteemed panelists will talk about their successful data projects in partnership with TTS and the impact on the overall agency mission. So I'll go ahead and briefly introduce the panel, and then we'll dive into some questions. So today we have Kate Darling. She is the Director of Strategic Planning and Performance and Acting Chief Experience Officer at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. We also have from the Department of Energy, Paul Dimmerling. He's the lead engineer at the National Nuclear Security Administration's Nuclear Smuggling Detection and Deterrence Office. We also have Dr. Kelly Jibo, the Chief Medical and Scientific Officer of the All of Us Research Program at the National Institutes of Health. And finally, Janice Johnston. She's the Program Analyst for Food and Nutrition Service at the United States Department of Agriculture. So just want to say welcome so much to the panel, and I will go ahead and virtually pivot to Kate for our first question. So Kate, there are numerous success stories on this panel developing prototypes, strategies, and various tools to address data-related challenges. Can you talk a little bit about the fantastic HUD flagship prototype, and why was it successful, and what was the overall impact on the public?
Hi, yeah, sure. So, to give a little bit of a background about it, a key part of the HUD mission is to make sure that we provide safe housing. And in doing so, I would say lead-based paint poisoning is a major concern for us. It was widely used before 1978 and is known to cause a lot of health problems, especially in young kids. So HUD has a program where we distribute a few $100 million in grant dollars each year for lead-based paint hazard control. And we realize that we have a challenge, where on the front end, grant applicants lack information to accurately quantify the risk in their jurisdiction. And then once they receive funding, they may not have enough information to best target funds for remediation. So we partnered with the GSA COE team to consolidate multiple federal reports on lead exposure data. We layered it with some geospatial data as well. We use this to modernize that application process and also to help us target resources better. And I would say, we use public data, and then we also did leverage data from other agencies. So there's this nice data sharing quality to it as well. The tool is called the Housing and Lead Index, HALI. And, I would say one of the kind of key metrics we like to talk about is how it has shown to cut the application processing time in half from 48 hours to 24 hours. And it's still in prototype form, but it's really got us thinking about, future application.
Great. And just a quick follow-up to that. So how do you intend to scale or expand on this prototype that you were just talking about?
Yeah, so I guess one way would be to, increase our partnerships with, other stakeholders. So for example, we're looking into doing some research with Department of Education, and, we would try to help them, assist them with targeting resources for, special education. Also we're trying to expand it to multiple stakeholder groups. If we can, make this more public, like a public facing tool, expanding it beyond this like limited grant program application, there's a lot of potential to add in other data sets so that citizens, communities, state and local entities, and other stakeholders can leverage this tool. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kate. So I'm going to go ahead and pivot to Dr. Gibo, actually next. And Dr. Gibo, working at NIH, you're constantly interacting with sensitive data. Given the ever-present challenge of interacting with sensitive health data, can you talk a little bit about the All of Us project and how your team and Presidential Innovation Fellows address some of these challenges?
So I think, the All of Us Research Program takes seriously the trust that our participants place in us. The information that they share with us is very personal, and safeguarding this data is of the highest priority to us. We invest in extensive controls to use the best technology to keep this data safe. We use the most up-to-date industry standards and practices to prevent security breaches. We have a team of experts who help us with doing this, and they've established safeguards to conduct rigorous security testing, and they do this on an ongoing basis. Our experts make sure that we have security practices that meet both the program requirements on all federal, state, and local levels, and are working to do several different things. We work to work with our partners to make sure that we ensure all information security is a requirement for each award that we give. So all of our contractors and awardees agree to this. And there's a dedicated staff member at each consortium partner who agrees to data security. In many cases, this staff member is a shared resource with our program. And then we have constant electronic and human surveillance, automated tests, periodic penetrance testing. And this is largely informed by the National Institutes of Standards and Technologies standards, and we abide by the Precision Medicine Initiative privacy and trust principles. We think this is really important given the security of our data and the real trust that our participants have put in giving us or donating their data to this program.
Great, no, thank you. And on that note, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced with your approach to implementation, and how are you ultimately successful?
So I think balancing the legislative requirements for data sharing, human subjects research protection, and privacy have been a challenge, particularly when you balance it with security. The program continues to work with our policy colleagues, our scientific committee, and experts in the field to come up with viable approaches to ensure the data platform provides the scientific utility we want to allow scientists to conduct the research that they're hoping to, as well as we adhering to our data policy requirements. We're continuing to anticipate how to handle this moving forward with a potential increase in the diversity, both in the types of researchers and the data we have becoming available. And I think it's going to be an important conversation moving forward as we build out into more multidisciplinary traditional and citizen scientists in the future.
Great, thank you, Dr. Gibo.
Thank you.
Hello, Paul. Pivoting over to you. Again, since we're all very mission focused, can you just talk a little bit about the data strategy work your team embarked on in partnership with TTS-18F? So as you move into a second phase of work with 18F, what was the impact on your organization in phase 1? And how did the initial discovery effort help you optimize your data strategy and get you closer to delivering your agency's mission?
That's a very complex question. I think it deserves a little bit of background. The program that I work for is Nuclear Smuggling Detection and Deterrence for the Department of Energy. We work with international partners to bolster and build their capabilities to detect, deter, and investigate the smuggling of radiological and nuclear materials around the world. It's a mouthful, and what does that mean? Essentially is we work with over 60 countries in their country to provide them the equipment and the training and the knowledge necessary that when they encounter radiological and nuclear materials, that they deal with it in a way that protects both us, the United States, and the public. This means that we have large construction projects around the world where we provide and deploy equipment. And then that transitions to our partner countries and they maintain and execute the mission in line with other duties that they have, such as law enforcement or customs. You can think similar to the Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, similar types of activities where they scan for radiological nuclear materials. That's the background. So to your question is, in doing this, working with over 60 countries, we collect a lot of data, and it ranges from construction data, project management type of information. And as we transition, we maintain a relationship with international partners and help provide training and other activities and maintenance of equipment. And that also generates a lot of data. At the Department of Energy, we are blessed with the ability to reach out to national laboratories spread across the country, which are government-supported R&D centers to support us in this mission, and they all collect data. So our problem is data, and it's everywhere. And so 18F and the phase 1 was us in interviewing and using an agile process to really get at that and allow us to explore all the stakeholders in our program to understand how to become more efficient with it. Our goal is to help centralize the data, maybe not in one place, but maybe in as few as possible, and help us make actionable real-time decisions on that data. As we move into so that was phase 1, that's an exploratory phase. As we move into phase 2, the biggest challenge and change for us is really having the 18F team embedded with us, which is a stakeholder and objective with no dog in any piece of the fight, telling us that we need better guidance at headquarters to all those that do the work for us. And so we are working, and we've already built quite a bit of our data governance and our DevSecOps type of information. And as we move into phase 2, there's a lot of projects that we look forward to the expertise of the 18F team to help us prototype through.
Great, thank you. And I promise to make this next question a little bit shorter. You alluded to this earlier, but what was your experience trying out new ways of working like Agile and user-centered design? You alluded to this a little bit. What barriers or organizational challenges did you encounter during the work, and how did you overcome them?
For me personally, the Agile process was not new. As an engineer, I've led quite a few software development activities and design activities for radiation detectors. But the 18F team uses it in a way, in their pathway analysis, that was surprising. It let you explore the process, the people process of the operational elements that drive data around and how it needs to be used and when it needs to be available. Using this process and watching the 18F team and how talented they are at using Agile in maybe a different way, and some of the digital tools such as Mural and other software packages that they brought with them was very impressive. And it helps us document our requirements to make sure that we get what we need in the future. With respect to that, we've recently transitioned to this new telework style of life. And I believe our engagement with 18F and their Agile processes was a precursor, or maybe a goal to try to achieve for our program as a whole. And we've adopted to that and learned quite a bit.
Great, thanks so much, Paul, appreciate it. And Janice, over to you. Can you just talk a little bit about the FNS data validation service pilot your team embarked on in partnership with TTS? How did this effort help you to optimize your data to carry out your agency's mission? And what was the overall impact?
Sure, and thanks for the invite to talk here. I work for the Child Nutrition Program in Food and Nutrition Service, and we oversee school lunch and school breakfast, which serves about 45 million meals a day at the tune of about $20 billion in federal costs annually. Every year, a lot of those kids have to apply for school meals, and as part of that, school districts have to verify some of those applications to ensure that the right benefits are going to the right kids. Our system was kind of antiquated, and it only contained a few checks. Those checks occurred late in the process. So my office decided we wanted to increase the number of checks to increase the data integrity, and at the same time, try to figure out a way to provide those checks to our states and school districts without increasing burden on what they were already doing to get these data to us. This is probably our most important data set, and it drives policy decisions that we have to talk about with Congress, et cetera. So it was really important that we figure out a way to do this. We learned about TTS from some colleagues, and we ended up getting to have a chance to talk with them about their data federation project. And between the two of us, we figured out that the data validation service looked like it was going to be a really good fit with trying to get these data out on a cloud, or I'm sorry, the data validation service out on a cloud environment, make it accessible to our states for very little to no cost, and improve the quality of our data.
Great, thank you. And just a really quick follow-up to that. And again, you talked about this a bit, but can you just highlight some of the technical or organizational challenges you faced? And again, how you overcame some of those?
Sure. I should be clear that most of us in my office are policy analysts. So we don't spend a lot of time coding or doing other things. We had written all the edit checks in SAS because we knew how to use that, but that wasn't something that was going to work to get these checks out. So it was through TTS that we were able to get these checks out onto GitHub first and then transition into a cloud environment. Our states can write some pretty simple code for them and access the API, send their data up through our data validation checks, and it returns immediate responses on any errors. We couldn't have done it without TTS though.
Thank you so much, Janice. Okay, we're going to quickly shift over to some Q&A. There's some questions that already came through the panelists, but before we jump into Q&A, we just wanted to generate a quick poll. We are curious about some of your most pressing challenges to the audience when addressing data and analytics. So you can either respond to the poll that you see on your screen or also enter your question into the chat box, and I'll give everyone a minute to do both. Okay, while you are, please continue with the poll, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump into some questions for our panel. So this looks like this could be to all panelists, all and any. So has there been any examination of distributed ledgers to track and authenticate any activities?
I can potentially speak to that a little bit. Our data validation service is really unique in that only a state is accessing the system. They're sending records for their school districts. So we require an authentication token that's embedded in the code that the states use to send the call to the API. So we are very lucky in that we don't have a lot of concerns in that direction, and our system does not retain or store data. It simply verifies the data that's sent in and returns messages. So it's been great for us.
Great. And we have another question. To what extent do your analytical capabilities involve streaming data? So real-time updates of databases and streaming analytics.
So I can speak to that. We do near real-time analyses of survey data and other types of data that are being reported with some data checks as they come in to look at the validity of the data to make sure that it seems to be consistent with what would be biologically plausible. And we do quality assurance mechanisms to make sure that if there are abnormal results coming in on a regular basis, that we follow up with the sites to make sure that that's being checked on and to see why those things are happening. We also do data analytics in terms of our results, which inform the next surveys or other types of assets we might administer to our participants. So the types of answers we get from our participants are very helpful for helping inform the next round of questions we might be asking them.
Great, thank you, Dr. Gibault. And this is something I know that all of us are facing. In experience. So in both the public and private sector, we're constantly working with siloed data platforms. It's inevitable. Can anyone talk about a previous instance where you as an agency successfully addressed these data challenges, and talk a little bit about the effort and just provide any guidance in terms of the framework that you use to kind of to face this very, very common challenge.
Sorry, I was having trouble coming off of mute.
No problem.
I think every organization faces challenges of how data is located within different applications, and integrating those to make sure you have one version of truth when you have disparate data, and then avoiding duplicate data storage is very important. So we've tried to make sure that our inputs allow for uniform data and that we don't get duplicative data, because obviously that is both costly and difficult to sort through once it's actually been stored.
Great, thank you. Dr. Chiba, I'll give you a little bit of a break. This question's actually for Paul. So Paul, would you be a bridge that assists a company that handles data between the US and other countries where products and services are being presented or sold?
I don't believe so. Our relationships with partner countries are at a what we call an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. It's an agreement between the United States government and a specific organization within the partner country. And the information that we're sharing is equipment and some feedback information on how it's working and operating for them. Relative to larger data or what that system might be plugged into for their security applications is purely something on them. We do not sell equipment to them. We purchase COTS and commercially available equipment and provide it. So we are not in the loop or supporting partner countries that are doing procurements either. So I believe we wouldn't quite be the right touch point for that.
Gotcha. And Dr. Chiba, back to you. Can you expound on how industry leaders can provide data to your department for protection?
So I'm unclear what industry leaders we're talking about, whether those are pharmaceutical industry leaders or other types of data that's being collected from those types of groups, or are we talking about data industry? Regarding some of the ancillary studies with pharmaceutical industries or other commercial organizations, we're working through how to develop those partnerships and thinking about the policies that would surround both data sharing as well as the importance of diversity. One of the key tenets of the All of Us research program is diversity among all of our participants and global access to all of the data. So we are very keen to make sure that we have a cloud-based platform that is accessible to all types of researchers. And so we're working with all of the people who develop ancillary studies with us to make sure that they adhere to the principles of our program, and that data sharing and cloud-based access would be one of those principles.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Chiba. And thank you to all of our panelists. Really appreciate it. This is a great opportunity to chat through this topic. It's been a great experience, and I'm sure very helpful to those attending the event. But before I turn it back over to Rebecca, we took a poll initially, and I just wanted to quickly review the results. So let me just go back to the question. It was asking what are some of the most pressing challenges when addressing data and analytics? There was data quality, data security, data storage and operations, and data management and governance. And actually we have fairly between data quality and data management, fairly even split. So data management and governance at 49% and data quality just behind that, and followed by data security and data storage. So it seems like all these areas are fairly important and pressing challenges for those in the audience. So thank you so much again to our panelists. It was a fantastic discussion, and I will turn it back over to you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Alexandra. And thanks to our panel. Those were incredible insights on the interconnection between data and analytics and IT modernization, and loved hearing about the tools and methods you're all using. As promised, we're going to take a short break, but before we do have that one more poll to talk about thoughts around the event. So please participate. This is coming up. Let me see. The poll question is, what was the most valuable part of the event so far? Like the other polls, if you'd like, feel free to respond in the chat window. The options are the overview on IT modernization, ideas on implementing technologies, hearing from other agencies, best practices, techniques, and no value, not relevant. So thanks again for giving us your feedback. And if you have additional thoughts, again, please email. We're now going to take that short break and return promptly at 3:05. While we're on break, please share your thoughts and follow the conversation on Twitter at GSA_TTS and in LinkedIn. See you soon. All right, welcome back. Hope everyone was able to participate in that poll and think about all of those ways we can leverage AI and data analytics. Thanks again to everyone who just shared. Next up are a series of iTalks from the Department of Justice and the Small Business Administration. And to kick it off, I'll turn it over to 18F's Director of Product, Uchenna Mokasolana. Over to you, Uchenna.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. My name is Uchenna Mokasolana, and I'm the Director of Product. We're a team of senior cross-functional tech consultants who enable and empower federal and state teams to design, develop, buy, and deploy human-centered technological solutions faster and with reduced risk, meeting users' expectations and urgent mission needs now, not years from now. That might mean helping partners develop modernization roadmaps, building or redesigning websites, products, platforms, or tools, using small and modular contracts to de-risk procurement and manage vendors, or reworking processes that don't give you the outcomes you need. We've done a good job when our partners feel like they've done the right thing the right way the first time, and when they can culturally repeat what we've done for them, even after we've left. One of those partners is the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. I am honored to introduce Daniel Yee, the Senior Counsel for Innovation for the United States Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. Daniel leads the division's effort to use design processes and entrepreneurial principles to test new solutions for difficult problems in legal practice and civil rights. Prior to his current role, Daniel served as the director of DOJ's Fair Housing Testing Program. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Uchenna, and thank you to Administrator Murphy for her kind words about what we've accomplished together. And thank you to everybody here for having me. My name is Dan Yee. I am Senior Counsel for Legal Innovation at the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. And as Uchenna mentioned, my job is to help the department tackle longstanding, persistent challenges in law, legal operations, and civil rights, and ultimately to amplify the impact that we have on the world. And I'm here today to talk to you about the journey we took to tackle one of those challenges. So first off, like a little about who we are. So I work in a very, very specific part of the Department of Justice. The Civil Rights Division is the part of DOJ that is responsible for enforcing over 30 federal civil rights laws. And these are the laws that cover and protect people from discrimination in some of the key aspects of life in the United States. So these are things like voting, housing, education, employment, commerce, policing, and more. And what that means is that our responsibility, along with our partners in government and in the civil rights community, and I will point out many of our partners in government are actually here today in this session, which is terrific. But it's really to make the vision codified by these 30 plus federal civil rights laws a reality. And we do that in part through enforcement. And by enforcement, I mean we sue and prosecute people who violate those laws. Now, we do this, in my opinion, with the best collection of civil rights legal professionals in the country. We have 600 tremendously talented attorneys, paralegals, investigators, administrative professionals. And I get to call some of the most talented and knowledgeable people working in civil rights today my colleagues, which is just a tremendous, it's really an incredible honor. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a challenge we faced in fulfilling that responsibility. And what was that challenge? Well, so we carry out our enforcement-focused work, again, where we sue and prosecute people who violate these various federal civil rights laws. We carry that out through 9 distinct enforcement, what we call sections, but these are essentially teams of legal professionals who specialize in a particular area. And that can be housing, a team that focuses on housing, a team that focuses on voting, education, employment, policing, etc. And we also lean on the public to report violations across these 30 plus different federal civil rights statutes. And each year we get over 100,000 reports from the public. And that process of actually managing and processing the reports from the public that we receive of civil rights violations presented some long-standing and tremendous challenges for our organization. Now, first off, the public experience for someone who is reporting a civil rights violation was not great. If you go back one screen, if you look at this screen here, this is what happens when a tremendously talented group of attorneys who are the absolute best in the business at litigating civil rights cases designs a web page. It is incredibly detailed, it is incredibly precise, but it is also incredibly confusing. There are over 30 distinct reporting pathways ranging from phone, mail, fax, email, all depending, and it all depended on which one of those 9 teams you were contacting. And just as a very quick example, if you were someone who wanted to, for example, report an employment discrimination related issue, you had to know on our page that you needed to go to the employment litigation section as opposed to the immigrant and employee rights section. Now that organization makes a lot of sense to us internally. There's very, very logical reasons why we have subdivided ourselves in these particular ways, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense to people who are unfamiliar with the intricacies of how we operate. So it's no surprise that a few years ago, a university group who ran a usability study found that 80% of the testers who they worked with during the study had trouble either filing a report at all or filing a report with the right team in the Civil Rights Division. And that is a major issue for us. Every single person who works here, who works with me as a colleague, they're doing so because at some level they really want to help people. And so to find out that we could improve some aspect of how we do that is tremendously motivating. And this was something that was, as an organization, a deep and a critical priority for us. Now, so that's on the public side. Now, let's switch over to the staff side. Our staff was really struggling. We have a small team, so we have about 600 people, and they enforce a lot of different laws across the entire country. We have an even smaller set within that of intake specialists who handle essentially the front-end analysis of the things that are coming in. And that staff every day was getting deluged by reports that they had to handle through a largely manual process. A small team was handling over 100,000 things that were coming in every year, often through mail and often through, and they were managing it and filing it in largely, again, a manual way. And every day they felt like they had to dig themselves out and desperately had to focus on just the mechanics of report intake to avoid getting buried under. And rather than focus that mental energy on actually really digging deeply into each individual report, they had to think about the other 200 reports that were going to come into their queue later that day. So what were our goals? Our goals were pretty straightforward. We wanted to improve the complainant experience. We wanted to improve the public experience. We also wanted to reduce the load and demand on our internal staff. We wanted to make it easier for our intake specialists to do the job that we tasked them to do. And then finally, we wanted to improve kind of our data governance around this. We wanted to be able to eliminate some of the data stovepiping that existed to drive data-driven insights related to reporting. Now, with those goals in mind, we reached out and partnered with 18F. And why? Well, we did that because we were self-aware enough to know that having the most talented civil rights legal professionals in the world and some of the most talented civil rights attorneys in the world does not necessarily mean that they're also going to be the most forward-thinking, talented digital product developers. A big surprise, right? Now, I don't know how many of you know lawyers, but I am one, and I suspect that for most of you who know lawyers, you wouldn't immediately turn to them to actually create a great digital product when you had to do so. And we also knew, though, that that's exactly what 18F brought to the table. We knew that they had a tremendously talented group of people, and that is exactly what they were great at. So we wanted to bring together talented folks who knew how to build fantastic digital products, and we also wanted then to pair them with the talented folks who knew civil rights inside and out, and that's the folks that we could bring to the table. And that's exactly what we did in this case. This past June, we launched a new portal for the public to report civil rights violations. And you can visit it yourself. I encourage you to do so, but you can visit it yourself at civilrights.justice.gov. Now, this was not an easy journey. It took about a year to get there. And that's a time when our DOJ and 18F teams were working in a very, very tight partnership. We went through a very intense user research effort. We went through a very intense technical exploration around what was the right platform to deliver what we were trying to do here and to solve our problem. And we went through several design and testing cycles to get to where we are today. And from the public side, I have to say we now have a unified, streamlined experience for victims of civil rights violations. It really reframes, what I love about this on the public side is it really reframes a relationship between us and victims of civil rights violations, in that we're now engaging them as partners in civil rights enforcement, which was really always the case, to be honest, except it just wasn't necessarily conveyed by how we were intaking reports and the process that we had and our web presence at some level as far as how we did that. And just to that point, here's one piece of feedback, but we have a standard feedback module that folks can fill out at the end of the form that just says like, oh, how was this experience for you? It's very simple and straightforward. And it actually blows me away how many positive comments we received through that module, because I know that I rarely, if ever, actually go out of my way to leave a comment if I actually thought things worked pretty well. But in this case, we're actually getting a tremendous amount of public feedback about very much in line with what you see there. Now, that's not the end of the story, though. If you remember that photo of documents and files all stacked up, from the staff side, we've dramatically streamlined the experience with a single, really elegant report management system. And for all the work that went into the public-facing side, our internal management experience was just as much of a focus in this project. We saw this as kind of like a two-sided marketplace problem. We had the public that we needed to improve the experience for, but also the internal, like the key staff internally, the intake specialists who really needed to make this system go. And there are many, many tremendous things about the internal side, but I'll just highlight two. First, by working within a unified system now, instead of these 9 different offices all running their own systems that spanned across email, snail mail, fax, phone, et cetera, now our 9 teams are able to collaborate like they never have before. Before, each section and team maintained their own system, and it introduced tremendous friction for when something they received actually belonged to another team. And rerouting was just incredibly difficult. But now we have a system that allows people to do that at a click of a button. We also have features built in that enable a conversation between staff as they figure out how to collaborate and move forward any given report. And what I really love is that we've even seen a de facto community of practice crop up between the intake specialists in each of these different teams, where they're now talking to each other about trends and issues and questions that come up in this shared activity that they're engaging in. And before, frankly, many of them, even though they've worked here maybe for 10 plus years, they've never actually met their colleagues who just happen to work in a different enforcement team. Second, I really love that the internal interface was built and designed centered around the experience of our intake specialists. In a attorney-centric organization like DOJ, and by attorney-centric, I mean if Google is engineer-centric and Apple is designer-centric, there is no more attorney-centric organization you can imagine than the Department of Justice. It's really easy to feel overlooked if you're in an administrative support role. And in this particular project, the joint DOJ-18F team put the intake specialists squarely in the middle of this design process when they're thinking about how to create this internal management system. And that really reflects just how critical they are to our process and our collective success as an agency. Now, finally, in terms of data, we solved the first and biggest hurdle here, which is around that data stovepiping. Now, just to wrap up, I know we're getting towards the end of time. I just want to share a couple final thoughts. This project really solved a couple concrete and absolutely critical challenges in report intake. That's absolutely true, and you can see that for yourself. But its deeper value to me is really that it served as a broader case study for reflecting on how we could get better as an organization, and especially as it relates to technology. Working with 18F and TTS really helped us identify some gaps in infrastructural needs in our organization. And basically, it forced us to ask, if I could put it in straightforward terms, what is the difference between what we were able to achieve now with the civilrights.justice.gov compared to what we achieved before, which is that webpage that I showed you a long time ago at the beginning of this presentation. And what is really amazing is just how deep and trusted partnership with TTS can help an organization like us navigate this question. We hired, for example, our first product strategist ever as a result of this engagement. We will be, with the help of the PIF program, bringing on board the first folks we've ever had working with us who focus on user experience, user research, content strategy. Now we're working, civilrights.justice.gov is built on cloud.gov. And maybe most importantly, we're fundamentally changing how we view and approach technology from a quote unquote build and maintain model, where we put engineers together with subject matter experts and hope something good happens, and basically fix it if it breaks, to one of continuous improvement and value delivery, where every couple weeks, every month, we're asking, how did we make this thing better to deliver more value to our organization? And that's obviously a much, much healthier place and relationship for any organization to have with technology. And really, I just have to say again, this could not have happened without having a trusted relationship with TTS during this time. And that is something that's going to have an immeasurable impact on civil rights enforcement for years to come, and beyond just even the civilrights.justice.gov portal. And I'm really proud to be associated with it. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to work with such tremendous folks like Uchenna, and I'm really glad to be here to tell you about it.
Thank you so much, Dan. Now we're going to hear from SBA, and I'll hand it off to my colleague Phil to introduce our next presenter.
Hello, thank you, Daniel and Uchenna. My name is Phil Lamb, and I'm the Executive Director of Identity here at TTS. We at GSA consider identity to be a foundational component that is needed to provide a fully digital experience to the public. Just as someone greets you at their door and introduces themselves, we look to help provide the ability for the citizen to introduce themselves online so they can get their needs met by the government. To meet that challenge, we're promoting a technical, business, and policy platform that addresses citizen authentication and identity verification that can be shared across our federal agency partners. Now I'd like to introduce Sanjay Gupta, the Chief Technology Officer at the Small Business Administration. Sanjay's been serving as a CTO for SBA since 2017. In addition to leading business IT transformations across multiple industries, he brings extensive global experience on IT strategy, innovation, architecture, cloud, and cybersecurity. Thank you, Sanjay, for joining me today. We would love for you to share your experience in implementing one of our identity solutions, login.gov, in support of the CARES Act, and how that solution provided impact to your mission.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Phil, for inviting me to share SBA's experiences in the last 100 days, specifically in relation to the COVID-19 global pandemic. I also especially want to thank GSA and the TTS for the incredible partnership they have provided us, and we certainly couldn't have achieved what we achieved at the SBA without the support of GSA and TTS. I especially want to acknowledge Administrator Murphy's call out in her opening remarks, certainly a testament to the fine partnership and the collaboration we've been seeing for a long time now. Just a quick brief intro on me, and that'll help you sort of set the context of why I'm so passionate about modernization and use of existing solutions and so on and so forth. Very quick intro for me. I joined the SBA as a CTO about 3.5 years ago from the private sector. I've been a CIO, CTO prior to that for about 14 plus years. And then I've also led a consulting practice. And I've also authored about 20 plus research papers, sharing my experiences as a CIO and a CTO. So when I came on board the SBA in 2017, one of my charters, obviously as a CTO, is innovation. It's about driving transformation. It's looking at opportunities to modernize. And I won't kind of go into a lot of those details, but I just want to emphasize on two elements that I had picked on early on. Certainly, we are a lot of technologists today on this call. For me, it starts with the business, it starts with the mission, it starts with the goals. What are we trying to accomplish? And I'll tell you that when I onboarded the SBA myself, I was asked to submit some forms which were to be downloaded from the SBA.gov website. And I won't go into a lot of details, but that gave me a good indication and a validation that I was joining a very ripe, opportunity-rich organization. And that was certainly going to be interesting and challenging in addressing those ripe opportunities. So anyhow, customer experience is what I want to emphasize. And let me sort of talk about customer experience from multiple angles. Certainly for us, everything starts with the customer. So who's our customer at the Small Business Administration? It's all small business entities, entrepreneurs, and other individuals who are trying to come to the SBA to look for help in starting a business, in growing their business, or continuing to support their business in case of a disaster that's they've come across. So everything for us starts with the customer and how do we improve the customer experience. So let me just sort of give you a little case in point in relation to identity management, which is what we want to focus the discussion today on. I realized early on that the customers who were coming to the SBA through our main portal or the gateway to the world, SBA.gov, had multiple user IDs and multiple passwords they were using as they were interacting with different program offices within the SBA. Certainly not a good experience from a customer standpoint. Number two, I'd started having some initial dialogue with the 18F team, and I'd started to learn about login.gov services. And I realized that this was a perfect opportunity for us to be able to go into an enterprise single sign-on, if you will, for the technical inclined folks solution. Certainly here was 18F with a solution that was a cloud-based solution. I want to emphasize the fact it's a cloud-based solution. Certainly for us at the SBA, we have taken a cloud foundational approach, and we laid the foundation 3 years ago. And certainly the reason I bring that up is we could not have been able to support the unprecedented volume and velocity of demand on the SBA in this last 100 days. Certainly all of you have probably heard about the two flagship programs, PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Programs, EIDL. Let me give you a little context around both of these programs so it helps you understand the volume, the scale, and the velocity at which we were working with. So certainly, PPP is basically a loan guarantee program for the folks who are financially inclined. You probably understand between what's a loan guarantee versus an actual loan origination. Our EIDL program, or Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, is actually a loan program which we SBA originate and service as well. So there's a difference there if you think about it from that standpoint. So on our loan guarantee side, we processed in 14 days what we would have typically processed in 14 years. So let me say that one more time. We did 1 year's worth work in 1 day. So that's the extent of the volume we were talking about. On the disaster side, just to put this in context, SBA has been in existence about 67 years, and the disaster program has been going on for many, many years. The amount of loans for disaster that the SBA has processed cumulatively throughout its entire history, we, in the last 100 days, have far exceeded that volume of disaster loans that took us 67 years cumulatively to deliver. In the last 100 days, we've exceeded that. And by the way, that continues on. So I want to give you a little context why we're talking about volumes, why the velocity and the scale. So now let me sort of pivot a little bit towards the customer experience side where I started with. Having recognized that login.gov is a service, identity service, which obviously many other agencies also use, and understand that a lot of the users or our customers who work with the SBA most likely also work with another federal agency. And the chances are high, since login.gov solution for identity management has been used by other agencies as well, this SBA customer, they may also already be using login.gov services, obviously unknown to them, but they may be very well already an existing user. So certainly with that in mind, it was a no-brainer for us to select login.gov as a core identity platform. Certainly the fact that it was cloud-based, it was delivered as a service, Those are the two key elements. Again, I was looking at from my CTO perspective that we wanted to get away from building things we had and we still have in place, which we have not fully completely replaced, a custom developed, a home developed solution for identity management. Certainly does not have the capabilities which modern solutions like login.gov have. For example, multi-factor authentication. That's a common factor in today's identity management solutions. So it was a no-brainer for us to select that as a platform. So we started the implementation of login.gov. Now let me give you a for instance specifically in the last 100 days where login.gov became an essential part of our solutioning. So part of our PPP program, we were onboarding new lenders, specifically small businesses, community banks, and other lenders who were part of our loan guarantee program. And so what we did is in 8 days, mind you, that's if you are numerically inclined, that is less than 200 hours. We built a new portal which would accommodate, it's called Lender Gateway, which would accommodate our expansion in the number of lenders who are on the platform now to be able to correspond with the SBA in terms of the loan guarantee program. And so when we built the Lender Gateway, obviously we needed an identity solution, and obviously having known about login.gov, that was a de facto choice. But certainly we needed to be scaling up significantly, and we didn't want that to run into any glitches. So obviously we worked very closely with the TTS team to ensure that we had the support from the TTS backend to be able to allow to scale up and be able to increase the responses from a backend standpoint. So what did we achieve here? First off, what we achieved was the fact that we had the ability to improve a customer experience. And how did we do that? We were using a solution which is a single source of identity management. Now, we're not quite there to our vision, which is every external facing entity will use login.gov. We're not quite there yet. It's a journey we'd started. But we have now more than 2 or 3 different properties which interact with our customer base starting to use login.gov, and many more are in the works right now. So that would improve the customer experience because now they are using a single identity solution to interact with the SBA. And that helps them reduce the friction of the transactions that they are conducting with the SBA. Number 2, I talked about we wanted to get away from building services. This is a service available. I'm a believer of do not invent, use something that's been done and do not invent something which has already been invented before. So I said, okay, login.gov is a solution that's available to us. It's available as a service. So we are moving to a model of everything as a service. So this was a sort of a direct fit from that standpoint. It was cloud-based, it was modern. It provided all of the required controls and the NIST requirements so that we were able to scale up without necessarily having to worry about it. So I know we're probably running short of time here and I can probably keep talking about this solution for a long time, but I want to kind of just say the fact that we couldn't have been successful in our ability to deliver to the challenges that we at the SBA folk had without the support of partners like TTS, and certainly more partners as well, but certainly this has been an incredible journey. We look forward to this partnership on a continued basis, and certainly look forward to Phil and his team at the 18F helping us further our modernization and transformation.
Thank you so much, Sanjay, for your insights and continued partnership. And back to you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Phil. And thanks, Sanjay. Great insight from you. And of course, incredible insight as well, Uchenna and Daniel. Next, we're going to hear from Dominic Sale, the Assistant Commissioner of TTS Solutions, around how to stand up a website using platforms like Federalist and Cloud.gov. Dominic, over to you.
Thanks, Rebecca. So often in government programs, especially some of the smaller ones, don't have a lot of budget or the expertise to know even where to begin when creating a positive online experience for their customers. So add on top of that, the legal and policy requirements that programs need to meet, like security and accessibility, and most recently, the requirements found in the 21st Century IDEA. It's a daunting task for any program manager. So TTS has partnered with agencies across the government to provide experience and the tools needed to stand up digital presence. It's built primarily around the needs of users while also meeting the programmatic requirements. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce my friend, Lauren Stocker, from the GSA's Office of Shared Solutions and Performance Improvement. Lauren leads a team dedicated to making the federal government work smarter and better through the priorities of the President's management agenda. Lauren's team worked with TTS to rethink performance.gov from top to bottom on a tight budget and with lots of scrutiny from public and policymakers. Lauren has asked us all to cross our fingers that our 5-year-old doesn't barge into the room during our session. Welcome, Lauren, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Dom. And it's 5-year-olds. There are 2 of them, but they're locked away. So I'm so happy to be here with all of you today to walk you through who we are and why we decided to transition to TTS products, the results that we're seeing, and what's next for us. But first, I'll start with a quick primer on performance.gov. The site was first mentioned in law in 2010 and launched in 2012 with the mission of displaying the key priorities of the administration and how the government is performing on those priorities. The site is the home of the President's management agenda, 13 cross-agency goals, and 91 agency goals, which we refresh with progress updates every quarter. We're also the home of 48 interactive data visualizations and dashboards, a blog where we highlight agency work, hundreds of agency Gears of Government award winners from across the government, and Twitter and LinkedIn channels. And we have a multifunctional core team made up of developers, communication specialists, a data scientist, and policy experts from the Office of Management and Budget. But our broader team includes people and programs from across the government and the country. So how did we come to use TTS products, and why am I here today? So following the last election, we knew we needed to pivot quickly to archive Obama administration goals and prep a new site for Trump administration goals. It was also the perfect time to improve the site and adopt a more flexible platform that could easily refresh with new administrations and their priorities. So we explored platform options with 5 main criteria: cost, flexibility, open source, ease of procurement, and speed and ease of migration. And it became clear in our search that we didn't have to look far from home because elements of the TTS stack were the obvious choice. So in 2017, we froze the original performance.gov site and began working with TTS to build our new platform. And with a core performance.gov team of 2 people, Amin and Megan, we built the new site within 4 months by combining 4 TTS products. The US web design system was the first, which makes it easy to pull templates and components to design our pages. We use their color schemes to identify our new branding and create consistent looking pages. We pulled components like buttons and banners so that users could easily navigate the site. And the templates and designs are mobile friendly, so we can optimize the user experience for people visiting us using their phones, which, as you might imagine, is the majority of our visitors. The second component we turned to was Federalist, built on cloud.gov, because we wanted to be able to easily and quickly make changes to the site. We found that Federalist makes it easy to log into GitHub, create new branches with changes, generate preview links so that we can share them with our stakeholders and get feedback on how they look prior to publication, and to publish those changes to the live site quickly. The third TTS tool that we incorporated into the site was search.gov, which gave us the robust search function we knew was so important, because we know that many users come to our site looking for particular information. We wanted to give them as many ways as possible to help them find what they're looking for. And finally, we turned to the Digital Analytics Program, or DAP, to continuously monitor our web data in order to better understand our users, where they're coming from, what they're doing on the site, and how we can make improvements to their experience. So most recently, we made some modifications to our homepage in response to seeing our bounce rate go up. So the result is a more modern and user-friendly site. We're able to continuously add and change information as priorities and goal leaders change, modify the look and feel of pages when information is refreshed, make improvements to navigation when we see that users aren't able to get where they need to go, customize pages for different goal teams like the customer experience goal that Barbara Morton, who you'll be hearing from next, helps lead, and embed tools like the ones we use for our data visualizations. As you can see on the screen, we work with SBA to visualize over 10 years worth of loan data down to the county level in a dashboard which you can play with to see which loans are being made in your area. We're also able to integrate social media onto the site so that our content, our news and blog posts, and our Twitter feed are all telling the same consistent story. So we've come a long way from our original site, and we have a long way to go to make government performance information more accessible and relevant, and eventually to answer the question of what the public is getting for their money. But I'm confident we've got a solid foundation to build off of with our TTS building blocks, and we're ready to quickly transition to the next administration's priorities, be that next year or in 5 years. So to wrap up, we've seen 4 key benefits to using components of the TTS stack. The first is cost and time savings. We didn't have to do extensive research, embark on a lengthy procurement process, or custom design and build the site. The second is shared tools. We believe in government-wide shared services. In fact, we're the home of the Sharing Quality Services goal. So we're practicing what we preach by using a shared services approach with our platform. The third is the invested partnership that we have with the TTS team, which is one of the reasons why I'm here today. Our TTS partners have the experience and connections to answer any questions, help us brainstorm, and connect us to other sites to share experiences and build partnerships. And the fourth benefit is open source. Our open code allows us to benefit from and contribute to the ecosystem of talent, tools, and information, and we can easily incorporate and embed other tools like we have with our data visualizations. So thanks so much for your time, and please reach out to me and the performance.gov team with any questions, ideas, feedback, or partnership opportunities. We would love to hear from you. Back to you, Dom.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and back to you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Dom, and thank you, Lauren. That was an awesome demo of how to quickly spin up improved online experience for customers. Now, I'm going to pass it over to Nina Walia, the Experience Director for Emerging Platforms and one of our Presidential Innovation Fellows, to introduce our next session. Nina?
Hi, I'm Nina Walia, a Presidential Innovation Fellow embedded at the FDA to help modernize approaches to technology through human-centered design, HCD, or customer experience design. I'm super excited about this conversation today to help paint a picture of what that looks like tangibly in action with the fabulous Barbara Morton, Deputy Chief of the Veterans Experience Office. That's where she led an enterprise-wide approach to customer experience at one of the nation's largest agencies, the VA. PIF was proud to be tapped to help support this critical transformation, but more on that later. For now, let's deep dive into how the VEO is hardwiring HCD and customer experience into the VA and seeing results. Barbara, hi.
Nina, hello, and hello. It's great to be with you all today.
Now, Barbara, for those who don't know, what is the Veterans Experience Office?
So I'm biased, of course. I think the Veterans Experience Office is one of the best places to work in government. And the reason I say that is because our mission is really to focus on the experience of our customers, veterans, their family members, caregivers, and survivors, to make sure that experience is elevated to as a co-equal measure of our performance in the department, along with other very important operational metrics. So our goal is to really hardwire experience as a core business discipline in VA and to help our brothers and sisters across government as well do the same.
But how do you how do you capture something so qualitative like that, like human-centered design?
Yeah, so we are very, very fortunate that we have an incredible team that we've built over many years. So we're in about year 4 now at VEO. We were a startup about 4 or 5 years ago based on a catalyst that, that really prompted us to focus on the voice of the customer and again, infusing that into what we do. And so over that time, we've been able to build our own internal human-centered design practice. But before that, in the early days, we were very fortunate to leverage one of my very favorite programs, which is the PIF program, and other partners like the lab at OPM, who have incredible talent coming in from industry, private sector, that bring those skill sets into government, and then coupled with the folks who are careers who know how to navigate government, really created this incredible discipline that we've now begun to practice and sustain here at VA.
And have you seen real direct impact on using these methods?
So we have, and I always like to be able to showcase impact and results. So rewind about 4 or 5 years ago when this office and this concept was a great idea, but there weren't any tangible results yet. And so over time, it does take a little bit of time to build and show that evidence, right, and proof of impact. But we've been able to do that over many years of practicing human-centered design, focusing first on healthcare and patient experience. And what we're seeing is VA's measures of trust in terms of veterans feeling that they trust the department to fulfill its commitment to them has steadily been on the rise over the last number of years. And we've reached about an increase of about 25% over the last 4 years in terms of how veterans feel that they trust the department. So I always say proof positive that when you put the customer at center, you apply human-centered design practices, you leverage wonderful programs like the PIF program, you really produce magic results for the customer.
And how are you hardwiring these kinds of practices into the VA, into the DNA going forward?
Yeah, so that's been kind of the really interesting and quite frankly, kind of fun part for me. As a career public servant, I've been at the department for about 14 and a half years. And over that time, you really learn how to navigate government and sort of the levers that are important to utilize in government. So one particular example, you have regulations. I am a lawyer by trade, so of course I get very excited about changes in regulations. So one of the things that we did is we included as part of our department's core values and characteristics, customer experience principles. And so that includes trust, of course, and ease of transaction, effectiveness, and most importantly, I think, emotional resonance. So there are a number of other things. Our strategic plan, we've embedded customer experience, the Veterans Experience Journey Map, which I know is in the VEO Impact Story, which you'll share with folks. We've been able to infuse experience and the veteran's perspective in a variety of articles and vehicles that we leverage in the department to really help drive this movement. We've also been fortunate, as many of you may know, to be leading with OMB, the President's Management Agenda Cross-Agency Priority Goal that Lauren mentioned earlier. And so that's really also given us a stake in the ground to say, hey, experience matters. We need to elevate it so it's a co-equal component of how we measure performance, in addition to the operational metrics that are also very important to measure performance as well. And human-centered design is a key part of this.
Yeah, that's, I think, part of what has made you so successful are balancing things like this, the qualitative and the quantitative. So
yes.
Bringing in things like the journey map, which I know the PIFs help create and support, and then using that to find the moments that matter, as you say, to bring in the quantitative measures.
Yeah, and if I can give a quick example, and I always like to talk about this example in terms of the power of experience. So if you think about operational metrics that are important, let's say in a healthcare space, so number of patients that you see, number of appointments that you scheduled, surgical results, et cetera. Those are very important metrics. But other things that are equally as important to veterans might not be captured in those types of metrics. So one example that has come directly from our human-centered design research and practice is the concept that a moment that matters most to veterans when they're at a VA medical facility is navigating the VA Medical Center, right? These are big buildings, they've been built on top of each other. That was a moment that revealed itself as most important to veterans that naturally would never appear on an operational metrics dashboard. So we were able to take that insight and measure our performance in that navigation capacity, and also help our wonderful partners in the Veterans Health Administration brand and scale a greeter program across all VA medical centers. So if you walk into a VA medical facility, you will see what we call a red coat ambassador to help a veteran and their family navigate the facility. Again, power of experience. You get to surface and see things that you ordinarily might not understand to be super important in terms of performance, and you're able to deliver on that moment that matters most for the veteran.
Yeah, and another point of balance you talked about is the public and private approach, and it seems like having the PIF was part of that formula.
Absolutely. So I actually have a very lengthy and proud history with the PIF program way before I joined the Veterans Experience Office. So way back in probably 2014 or so, I had my first Presidential Innovation Fellow who came to me when I was in a different part of the organization that addressed veterans appeals. And so I knew at that moment what a great opportunity to welcome a brilliant mind, a programmer by trade, who understood how to build technology solutions. And I could bring this person in, help him navigate the culture and sort of the levers, as I mentioned before, of government. It became this perfect marriage where he was able to deliver a technology solution that was greatly needed in absolutely like zero time and zero cost except for his salary. So this wonderful partnership enables us in government to sort of move the needle in a variety of ways at reduced cost using innovative and modern solutions, leveraging these incredible partnerships. And so I've had multiple Presidential Innovation Fellows, as you know, throughout the last 4 or 5 years, and I continue to be such a strong advocate of this program. I always tout it as a best practice for anybody who's trying to transform government in terms of customer experience or frankly, any other kind of transformation initiative. It is absolutely a best practice to bring in a Presidential Innovation Fellow to help you out.
And if you guys can't tell, I'm gushing because Barbara is one of my my heroes for the change that she's made, and part of why she's one of my heroes is that she's made it part of her mission and VEO's mission to share these best practices that they've learned with others, with sister agencies. And so I was wondering, why is that so important to you in the VEO?
You know, for me, I think when I first came to VEO, people thought I was crazy because it was a startup. It was a brand new concept. You know, why would you ever want to kind of dive into this very unknown, vast space? And for me, the mission, of course, to really put the veteran experience and empathy at center was so incredibly critical. And to have partnerships, like-minded creative thinkers, innovators by trade and by nature in the PIF program has been an incredible practice for us. And I feel, frankly, because of some of the pain points, growing pains that we experienced in VEO as we were developing and maturing, it's always going to happen as a startup. But my duty and frankly, my passion is to be able to share what I know and what I learned with my brothers and sisters across government, because nobody else has to start from scratch. Nobody else has to start from a blank slate. We've done it in a way at VA. It's not the only way, but if there's a way that I can support and help my brothers and sisters get to the same mission outcome, I'm all in, all for it.
One of the first things that Barbara shared with me was a customer experience cookbook where they started to memorialize some of this stuff so we could follow it at the FDA, and I'm so grateful. I have one last question.
Sure, of course.
So as listeners, all of us are embarking on a journey to transform, you know, potentially large agencies to be more customer-centered. Where would you give us advice to start?
I think one of the most important places to start is literally right here with this community of practice and this forum of folks who, again, are true believers. They are bought in, they understand the value, frankly, in terms of the heart, good feeling of value with CX, but also the ROI, the tangible savings and return on investment that you get. And I think if you don't know where to start, know that you have a huge community around you in government of like-minded thinkers that are here to help you along the way. One thing that I wish that I knew back 4 years ago was that these brothers and sisters exist in my orbit. I didn't see you all, I didn't know you all at that time, and I wish that when I was starting out, I would have known that. So know that you're supported, know that we have an incredible community of CX trailblazers, both from industry and within government, to help each other out on this journey.
I am so thankful for you and for this community you're speaking of, and Thankful for your insight and for the positive impact that you've been able to make on veterans' lives through this. So thank you, Barbara.
Thank you for your time, and everybody stay tuned for the CX Cookbook. We'll be probably publishing it as part of our end of CAP goal capstone project with OMB and sister agencies in September. So excited to share that more widely.
All right, Rebecca.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your time.
Wow. Thanks, Nina and Barbara. What a great collaboration between PIF and VEO. It's incredible to see the power of human-centered design and how it can be quickly implemented to help with citizen needs. It's fabulous. So now I get to pass it over to our acting TTS director, Bob DeLuca, to introduce our final speaker.
Thanks, Rebecca. That's great. I have the distinct honor and privilege of introducing our final keynote speaker, Matt Lira. Matt is the White House Office of American Innovation Special Assistant to the President for Innovation Policy and Initiatives. He's going to offer up his vision for IT modernization broadly. With that, Matt.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for having me here today, and thanks all of the GSA team and the Technology Transformation Service team for facilitating today's conversation. It's been fantastic to see the impact and stakeholder sharing stories throughout the federal government ecosystem. Really about the power of the technology transformation to achieve our mission better and improve people's lives. One of the things I'd like to say, and some of you who've heard this before will know it's one of my cliches, is that a vision without effort is simply a dream. An effort without a vision is just sort of a routine day-to-day action. It's the combination of a vision with effort that really leads to these great transformative changes. And that's what TTS is all about, is not only having the ability to do the hard work, to bring agencies together around a coherent vision, but to make sure that that vision is something worth all of our time and can really lead to those dynamic results. First and foremost, the record of results that have been created by Technology Transformation Services is second to none. Throughout the different components of your organization, you've been able to successfully deliver results time and time again, and that's a record that I think all of you can be proud of. But frankly, it's one of the things that's most unique about your organization is that it's really based around a team mentality and building partnerships. And that may be a partnership between GSA and another agency. That may be a partnership between career federal professionals and term hires coming in for tours of duty. And it may be partnerships between vendors and the federal government. But this spirit of partnership and collaboration is something that not only gives you a unique ability to tap into the best and brightest innovation at any given time, but to truly figure out how can we operationalize that innovation to make the biggest difference. When I think about the change TTS is able to achieve, it really inspires me. And I'm sure that you've heard throughout today's conversations a lot of incredible stories of meaningful change throughout an entire array of stakeholders in the federal government. So I wanted to touch a few minutes, not necessarily on the what you've done and the what of all these projects, but the why. It's no secret that we live in a polarized time. It seems that people can't agree on very much. And even things that we once took for granted are continually being debated. And that isn't inherently a bad thing in a democracy. But one of the special things about the idea of technology transformation and the work of TTS is that this is something that consistently brings people together. Whether people who can seemingly agree on nothing else agree on this mission. People who can agree on nothing else agree that they believe in you and they believe in the work that you do to drive transformation in the federal government. And so that's not only, kind of gives you the warm fuzzies, at least if you're like me, it's also a responsibility. We have an obligation to leverage this rare faith that we've achieved from both sides of the aisle, from people who are West Coast and technology executives and sort of career civil servants based out of Washington. Whatever division lines you want to draw, TTS seems to bring people together. So we have an obligation to use that faith to deliver meaningful results and prove that kind of change and that spirit of collaboration, can work in modern America. So, when I think about the what you do, the why and why you do it, it really inspires me, and I hope it inspires you to work on the projects that we have ahead of us and to make sure that we meet our moment and can achieve those results. I had, fairly substantially longer recorded remarks, which I'm sure are out there somewhere in the ether of society, but I wanted to cut myself short, and I talked with Bob about this beforehand, because it's really about collaborating with this community and hearing what you have to say, your questions, both the TTS community and of course the broader federal community of partners that have worked with TTS to make a difference as you have. So sort of enter into the Q&A portion, and Bob, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, sure, Matt. I'll read the top question that's trending here in the chat here. It says, is the White House planning to promote modernization efforts using TTS throughout the interagency community? Many of us out here do not know how to engage with that group.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So the short answer is absolutely. I think if you think about, we're in the 5th year of probably a 10-year vision when it comes to technology transformation. And the first couple of years, we're at the sort of tail end of the Obama administration. And there was a lot of experimentation and sort of that first domino problem of how to get started. When at the start of this administration, we were very adamant that we wanted to build on this progress rather than sort of hit the reset button for no particular reason. And so, hopefully you felt that support over the last several years. We've built on the things that we think were working, and we've tried some new ideas. And I think through those experiences, we've continued to evolve and strengthen TTS and our general capabilities. Our goal for the last few years has been to validate strategies and capabilities. And so every single engagement has not only delivered a result in its own right, which of course is a reason to celebrate, but collectively, the collective whole of these projects has created a body of knowledge for how to do change management, at an enterprise level as an institutional capability for the federal government. And so it is our hope that having demonstrated that these capabilities work in varying ways and with various partners, that we can now scale that in a true interagency way across as much of the federal government as is possible over the next 5-year period. And so certainly for the remainder of this year, that enabling and positioning TTS to do that remains a priority. But I believe that ultimately our goal is to build a capability that is validated and that's proven as an integral part of interagency processes and interagency decision making, and is positioned to be a capability for the federal government for the next 20 years. And so there's a lot of work in that, but that's where we are.
That's excellent, Matt. I know I've heard you refer to that as your flywheel approach in the past, and I've seen you speak a number of times, so I believe in that. So if you want to talk about that a bit more, or if you want to just end it there.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's kind of 2 analogies that I use. The first is, as Bob mentioned, sort of a flywheel, and the hardest part of any kind of transformation is getting started. But that once you have gathered the strength of your own momentum, at a certain point, it starts as a radical idea that's almost ridiculed, but you're able to gather the energy to get those first few steps, and then it begins to produce results, and that attracts more supporters, more engagements, which of course then produce their own results, and so that flywheel gets moving until it's really a force of its own nature. And so in the context of the federal government, the first engagements with, some really incredible agency partners, I know some of them are participating today, has been difficult at times, but with the combination of a fantastic team at TTS and a fantastic team of people at the agencies, we've been able to get those projects moving, to get the first few steps of that flywheel. And so as an agency is able to modernize both their back-end operations and their citizen experience on the front end, that capability so that alone would be successful, but that capability for change management can move from agency to agency in a cyclical pattern. And so as it moves as it sort of wraps up its operations at one deployment, it moves to the next set, and then it moves to the next tranche and so on. And eventually, after a period of time, it of course will end up back where it started because technology continues to evolve. And so everyone really agrees with that vision. When you talk to whether they be academic experts or industry experts or government experts, some form of that statement seems to resonate with all stakeholders. And so over the last, as I say, 3 to 5 years, I think TTS has had a major role in getting that flywheel started. We're now starting to feel the momentum, as you've seen with throughout today's agenda. If we can work together as a team to keep that momentum not only going, but to continue building it to be faster and even more ambitious, I think that becomes a sort of self-fulfilling capability for the federal government.
Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate your time today. I know that we're a bit over time. We're definitely going to invite you back to the next in a series of this. We'd love to get a bit more time to get some Q&A with you, but
yeah, and if I could say one thing, Bob, sorry.
Sure, absolutely, go ahead.
My apologies. I just want to make sure, if I didn't say this earlier, it's something that I want to say to the TTS team in particular that may be dialing in, and that is that, and hopefully you've heard this from Bob, is that, when I say that, you have the support of this wide array of stakeholders, I mean, I don't mean that in a small way, I mean that in a very big way. And I'll just speak for myself here, since I have the opportunity to speak with you directly, is that I believe in you. I believe in this strategy, I believe in these programs, but I believe in you and what you do. I believed in it since before I worked in the White House. I've continued to believe it while I've been here. And so there's going to be challenges, and we're going to continue to overcome those challenges, but fundamentally, you have support, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you are capable of working again with these fantastic agency partners.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciate your support, your enthusiasm for this. It's been great. Thank you so much. I'm going to now transition this over to back to Rebecca so she can close us out for the day. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob, and thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's event. We hope you're walking away with more than you came with. But to that note, if you would not mind, we have a wonderful feedback survey. That link is being dropped in the chat right now, and we'll send it out afterwards as well. Also, as we mentioned in the beginning, this is the first in a series of events. We hope you'll join for those in the future. More information is forthcoming, and if you follow us on social media, we'll continue the conversation and make sure that you're all aware of those next dates. Thanks again, and have a fabulous rest of your day.